It was 9:17 a.m. on a rainy Tuesday in Nashville when I received the email that fractured everything I believed in. I was still at my desk at the accounting firm, finishing the quarterly reports, when the subject line popped up on my screen. About the RV. My heart skipped a beat. We had just finalized the loan last week, and today was supposed to be the delivery day. I thought maybe Derek had a question about the pickup. Something minor, mundane. But when I clicked into the message, the words felt like knives to the chest. Claire, I'm sorry for not saying this in person. I've fallen in love with someone else. I didn't plan it, it just happened. I'm leaving to start a new life with her. I'll be taking the RV with me. Since it's in your name, I trust you'll handle the repayments. Goodbye. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe. The fluorescent lights above me buzzed faintly. The office chatter around me blurred into static. For a moment, I forgot how to exist. My hand moved on its own, dialing his number. He picked up after 2 rings, as calm as if we were discussing groceries. I meant every word, Derek said, his voice flat. She's not just a fling. I think I actually love her. I'm sorry, Claire. Really. I remember whispering something, maybe begging, maybe cursing, maybe both, but he just said, "Take care of Ethan," and ended the call. Just like that. Gone. I sat there for 10 more minutes, staring at my monitor, willing the world to rewind just a few hours. But when I opened my banking app, reality struck harder. Our joint account, once sitting comfortably with nearly $20,000, now showed a remaining balance of $48.75, the exact amount left after the last gas station withdrawal he made on his way out of town. By 6 p.m., I was back home, standing in our quiet living room, still half hoping this was all just a cruel prank. But the RV was gone. His closet was empty. Even the coffee mug he always used had vanished from the dish rack. And our 12-year-old son, Ethan, was sitting at the kitchen table, silently doing his homework. I tried to act normal, made him grilled cheese, sat across from him with a glass of water I couldn't drink. He didn't look up, but his voice broke the silence. "Mom, you haven't eaten in 2 days. You're not okay, are you?" I forced a smile. "Just tired, sweetheart. Long day at work." Ethan set down his pencil. "People lie when they look up and to the right. You just did that. Are you lying to me?" I swallowed hard. "Something happened. Your dad. He left." Ethan didn't cry. He didn't even flinch. He nodded slowly and said, "I kind of figured. He hasn't been home in 3 days." There was something unsettling in how calm he was, as if he'd already accepted it. But I knew better. I could feel the hurt hiding just beneath the surface of his voice. I reached for his hand, and this time mine was the one shaking. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I sat alone in the dark kitchen with the lights off and my arms wrapped around my knees. The silence in the house was unbearable, too still, too loud. Every creak of the floorboard above me sounded like a ghost from my old life reminding me of what used to be. I replayed Derek's words over and over, as if there was some hidden clue in them, but they were just that, words. Cold, final, and cruel. The kind of words that rewrote entire futures in a single breath. The next morning, I could barely get out of bed. My body felt like stone. My chest caved in from the weight of everything. I told myself I'd call the bank, I'd sort out the loan, I'd figure out the finances. But none of that happened. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bathtub with the water running, fully clothed, for nearly an hour before Ethan knocked on the door. "Mom, are you okay?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. That weekend, I tried to go back to work, thinking routine would anchor me. But by noon, during a staff training session, my knees gave out. My vision blurred. Voices around me became muffled echoes as I collapsed onto the carpeted floor. When I opened my eyes, I was staring at the ceiling of a hospital room. The diagnosis was clinical: acute exhaustion and stress-induced arrhythmia. I was admitted immediately. For drips, white walls, machines that beeped in quiet warning. The nurse told me I'd fainted from a combination of malnutrition and overexertion. I didn't feel anything. Not fear. Not pain. Just numbness. But then Ethan walked into the room. His usual calm demeanor had cracked. His eyes were wide with panic, and his backpack was still slung over one shoulder. Mom? What happened? Are you going to be okay? I smiled as best I could and reached for his hand. Of course I am. I'm not going anywhere. I wouldn't leave my favorite person alone, would I? His shoulders dropped with relief. Good. I was called out of class. The school said you collapsed, and I thought his voice trailed off. I pulled him into a hug and felt his heartbeat racing through his jacket. You don't have to worry about me, Ethan, I whispered. I'll be fine. I promise. But I wasn't. The doctor returned later that evening with test results. His tone was serious, careful. Too careful. You're going to need surgery, he said. Soon. I'd recommend we proceed within the next few days. It's nothing we can't manage, but it won't get better on its own. Surgery. I stared at him, blank, as if he were speaking another language. And as he left the room, I looked up at the 4 in my arm, the slow drip, drip, drip of medication tracing time in silence. The weight of debt, betrayal, and sickness pressed down like a tidal wave. A few days ago, I was just an exhausted wife and mother. Now I was drowning, with no savings, no partner, no way forward. And Ethan, sweet, unshakable Ethan, was only 12 years old. I was discharged from the hospital a week later. The surgery had gone well, but my body still felt fragile, like one wrong step might break me all over again. Ethan insisted on carrying my bag, walking slightly ahead, glancing back every few seconds to make sure I was still behind him. His shoulders seemed broader somehow, or maybe I had just become smaller. The sun was warm that morning, but inside me everything felt cold. We got home just after noon. I set my keys on the counter and moved toward the mail that had piled up during my stay. Bills, flyers, and then a thick white envelope marked loan repayment notice. I opened it with shaking hands. Final notice, payment overdue. Vehicle loan, $75,000. I blinked, reading the number again. It looked surreal, printed in ink, like it belonged to someone else's life. Didn't we set up automatic payments? I rushed to my bedroom, pulled out my wallet, and checked the bank balance using my debit card. The machine printed out a tiny slip of paper that fluttered in my hands like a dying leaf. $12.63. That had to be a mistake. I logged into the banking app. Every withdrawal over the past month was there. Gas stations, hotel bookings, a luxury camping gear store, restaurant bills, all in Derek's favorite cities, Atlanta, Charleston, Savannah. The final withdrawal, $6,800, taken out 3 days after my surgery. I dropped onto the couch, dizzy. My savings gone. The RV gone. My health shaky. I had nothing left but Ethan. And when he walked into the room holding a glass of water, I couldn't even pretend anymore. He handed me the glass, then placed the back of his hand on my forehead. You don't have a fever, he said, but you look pale again. Are you okay? I didn't answer right away. Ethan, I can't work right now, I finally said, my voice small. And your father, he didn't just take the RV. He took all the money, everything we had. Ethan's expression didn't change. Instead, he sat down beside me, took a deep breath, and said, Then I'll help. I blinked. What do you mean? I can deliver newspapers after school, maybe mow some lawns, and I've been looking online. There are websites that pay kids for surveys or reviews or helping with basic coding. My heart broke and healed all at once in that moment. He shouldn't have to do any of that, but he was ready. And then, as I wiped my eyes and tried to thank him, he said something that changed everything. Actually, maybe we can get the RV back. I looked at him, startled. What? It's in your name, right? He asked calmly. Yes, but I don't even know where it is. Your father's gone. Ethan pulled his phone from his pocket. I wouldn't be so sure about that, he said, unlocking the screen. Remember that hike we took in July? The one where I got lost. I nodded slowly. That day had terrified me. I wasn't really lost, he said. I just wanted a phone. So I made you both worry enough to buy me one. My mouth fell open. And after I got it, he continued, I installed a GPS tracking app on your phone and on Dad's too. I stared at him in silence. Ethan tapped the app. A map opened. A single blinking dot appeared just a few miles west of Asheville. Dad's phone active. Location: Pisgah National Forest. 3 days later, on a chilly morning, painted in overcast gray, my phone rang. I had barely gotten out of bed when I saw the caller ID, a known number. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but something in my gut told me to answer. Hello, I said, my voice still hoarse. There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in weeks. Claire, it's me. Please, I need your help. I didn't respond. He continued, Don't play dumb. It's Derek. The police are asking questions about the camper van. They said it might be considered stolen since it's in your name. I didn't do anything wrong. I need you to explain. Otherwise, I might have to go down to the station. I didn't say a word. Just listen to the panic rising in his voice, like smoke from a burning bridge. After he hung up, I turned to Ethan, who had been silently sipping tea across the kitchen table. He's in trouble, I said. The police are on to him. Ethan nodded, calm as ever. Good. Then let's go finish this. By the time we arrived at Pisgah National Forest, the GPS pin had stopped moving. The air was thick with pine and the scent of campfire smoke. We followed the dirt road deeper into the woods until we saw it, the camper van, parked at a clearing near a fire pit, surrounded by tall trees and silence. 2 police officers stood nearby, speaking to a disheveled-looking Derek who kept glancing nervously over his shoulder. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. The officers turned as I approached, and I explained that I was the legal owner of the vehicle. They looked at me, then at the title I handed them from my purse. Derek's face turned pale. Claire, can we talk in private? Please. I asked the officers to give us a moment. They nodded and stepped away. Look, Derek started, shifting awkwardly. I didn't mean for things to go like this. I just thought, since the RV was new and we're married. We're not married anymore, Derek, I said coldly. You filed the papers. That makes you a stranger driving a vehicle you don't own. That's called theft. His lips twitched, but he said nothing. I held out my hand. The keys. Reluctantly, he pulled them from his pocket and dropped them into my palm. It felt like victory, not just for the RV, but for every night I cried alone in a hospital room, wondering how things had gone so wrong. Then, without a word, Ethan stepped forward. He looked his father in the eyes and asked calmly, Why did you abandon us? For her. Vanessa was inside the camper van, sitting with her legs crossed and a smug look on her face. She leaned toward the open door and answered for him. Because I'm younger, hotter, and don't come with all that baggage. Ethan didn't even blink. I wasn't talking to you, lady. The air shifted. Vanessa's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. Dad. Ethan repeated. Derek looked at the ground, scratching the back of his neck. Things just happened, son. Life's complicated. Ethan crossed his arms. Then I guess the police can help you sort it out. My heart swelled with pride and pain. He was only 12, but in that moment he held more composure than most adults I knew. Vanessa huffed and muttered something under her breath, then stood and stepped outside the van. She froze mid-step, a gasp escaping her lips. Standing at the tree line were 2 older people, their arms folded, expressions stormy. Vanessa's parents. Vanessa's expression contorted into something between panic and disbelief. Mom? Dad? What are you? How did you? Her mother didn't answer. Her father took one long step forward and growled through clenched teeth. You have any idea the shame you've brought on this family? Vanessa instinctively backed away, but there was nowhere to go. She was cornered by her past, her choices, and her consequences. Derek turned to me, confusion written across his face. Wait, what's going on? I didn't speak. Instead, Ethan did. She's been lying to you, he said calmly, about everything. Vanessa's eyes darted to Ethan, her voice shrill. What the hell does this little brat know? Ethan didn't flinch. Enough. Enough to know you left Dad's company the same week you too started sneaking around. Enough to know your parents live near here and that you've been staying with them whenever the van ran out of gas money. Enough to know you're not even 3 months pregnant. Vanessa's eyes widened. What? Because you told the office you were expecting before the welcome party, Ethan continued. I saw the photos, and the date on the invite was almost 4 months ago. Derek turned, staring at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Wait 4 months, he said. That's not possible. You said we only started seeing each other 3 months ago. Vanessa's mask shattered. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since we arrived, she was completely silent. You got played, Ethan said, his voice steady. Just like you played us. Derek's jaw clenched. Is it even mine? Vanessa's silence was answer enough. He staggered back like someone had punched him. I could almost feel the sting of betrayal ripple through him, but it was too late for sympathy. You said you wanted a new life, I said quietly. Congratulations. This is it. Vanessa suddenly turned toward her parents, desperation flashing in her eyes. Please tell them they're wrong. Tell them I'm not. Her mother cut her off. You've lied enough. We're done. Her father nodded. You want to steal, lie, and cheat? You're on your own. Vanessa opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. She looked smaller now. Not powerful. Not seductive. Just small. Derek sank onto a folding chair near the fire pit, running both hands over his face. The silence around us grew heavy, broken only by the wind through the trees. I looked at Ethan, who simply stood with his hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. You planned all of this? I asked softly. He gave a tiny nod. After you collapsed, I got scared. I thought, what if you don't wake up? What if he wins? I needed to do something. So I went to Dad's office and asked around. People there weren't surprised. One of them even gave me Vanessa's parents' address. And the GPS? He shrugged like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I never deleted it. I stared at him, this 12-year-old boy who somehow held the poise of a grown man. I had spent so long thinking I needed to protect him from the world, not realizing he was already learning how to navigate it on his own. You really are my son, I whispered. He smiled. Of course. Who else would I be? I turned back to Derek, who now sat hunched forward, elbows on knees, eyes vacant, a shell of the man who once stood beside me at the altar, a man who once whispered that we'd build a life slow and steady, just the three of us. That promise had been traded for cheap motel rooms, gas station coffee, and a woman who couldn't even keep her lies straight. You think this ends here? I asked him. That giving back the RV wipes the slate clean. He looked up, startled. I took a deep breath and spoke each word with quiet clarity. You emptied our savings account. That money, $20,000 of it, was mine before we ever got married. It was everything I'd put away since college. And now it's gone. You took it. That's theft. Derek shook his head. But we were married. That money was ours. You filed for divorce, remember? I said, that changes everything. His eyes flicked to the tree line where the officers still lingered, then back to me. You don't have to do this, he said. I made mistakes, but I'm still Ethan's dad. I felt Ethan step closer beside me. Then act like it, he said, voice cold. Start by giving back what's not yours. I nodded. Return the $20,000. Today. Derek opened his mouth, closed it. I don't have it anymore. Then you'll repay it. Every cent, I said. And that's not all. There's also child support. I'll be filing for it immediately. Vanessa scoffed from behind us. Oh, come on, it's not like he has a job. I turned to her, steady. Then it's a good thing I already found him one. Both of them froze. I spoke to HR at the factory where my company outsources manufacturing, I said. They're hiring. Manual labor. Long hours. Steady pay. Starting Monday. Derek stared at me, stunned. And the best part, I added, pulling a folded document from my coat pocket, they've agreed to have part of your wages garnished. Automatically. $500 a month to me. Until the full amount of child support and damages are paid. Vanessa looked like she might scream. And if he quits? She spat. I shrugged. Then we go back to court. And next time, I won't stop at just money. She took a step forward, but her father grabbed her arm. Don't, he warned. I turned to the officers at the edge of the campsite and waved them over. Before you go, I said to Derek, there's one more thing. He looked up, his face hollow. You lied. You stole. You left your son when he needed you most. I won't forget that. And I won't let Ethan forget either. Not because I want to punish him, but because I want him to remember what real consequences look like. Derek didn't argue. He didn't beg. For once, he just sat there and took it. The officers approached. I explained that we wouldn't be withdrawing the police report, only updating it with the missing funds and confirmation of identity theft. Vanessa looked like she might bolt. But before she could move, Ethan pulled out his phone and held up the screen. One button, he said calmly, and I can call them back. Vanessa's mother turned away in disgust. Her father muttered something about lawyers and started making calls. The sky was darkening, the clouds thick and heavy with the weight of everything said and unsaid. But inside me, a strange lightness had begun to stir, the kind that only comes after standing your ground, after saying enough. Red and blue lights flickered through the trees as the police car pulled closer, its tires crunching over gravel and pine needles. Vanessa's face turned ghost white. Her fingers trembled as she reached for Derek's sleeve, but he pulled away. I'm not going to jail for this, she hissed, panicked. This isn't all my fault. No, I said, stepping between them in the vehicle, but you were part of it. You enjoyed the ride, didn't you? Spent the money, traveled in the stolen RV, lived the fantasy while my son and I scraped by. Her jaw clenched, but she said nothing. The officers returned and asked us to confirm the updated charges. I did calmly, clearly. 1 count of grand theft auto, 1 count of financial theft, 1 of identity misrepresentation. It wouldn't be a long sentence, most likely, but it would be enough to leave a mark. Enough to remind them that betrayal carries weight. And justice, when pursued with outrage but with purpose, cuts deeper than vengeance ever could. As Derek was led toward the car, Ethan stepped up beside him. You're right, he said quietly. You're still my dad, but I'm not going to pretend that means something anymore. Derek paused, shoulders heavy. He turned, as if to speak, but the words died in his throat. You don't just get to disappear, Ethan continued. Not from my life. You're going to show up every month. In court documents, in bank transfers, in my mother's recovery. That's who you are now. There was no anger in Ethan's voice, just truth, plain, sharp, inescapable. Vanessa was the last to be placed into the back seat. Her parents didn't say goodbye. They simply stood there, arms folded, watching her go as if they were mourning someone who'd already been lost long before the handcuffs. The doors closed. The sirens didn't wail. They didn't have to. The silence said enough. 2 weeks later, I sold the RV. The dealership gave me just enough to cover the last chunk of the loan. I wired the payment, closed the account, walked out of the bank lighter than I'd felt in years. The factory job Derek had taken. Under pressure. Started paying out by the end of the month. The first $500 child support installment landed in my account like a victory flag. Not because I needed the money, though I did, but because it symbolized something far greater. That I had taken back control. That I had survived. That I was no longer the abandoned wife lying on a hospital bed, waiting for answers that would never come. Ethan and I rebuilt life slowly, piece by piece. He still did extra chores, still researched new ways to save and help. But he also returned to being a kid, more relaxed, more open. Sometimes, late at night, he would sneak into the living room where I sat reading and curl up next to me, like when he was little. We didn't talk much about Derek anymore. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer defined us. We were more than what he left behind. One afternoon, after school, Ethan and I sat on the porch, watching clouds drift over the Blue Ridge Mountains. He was sketching something in his notebook, blueprints, I think. He wanted to be an engineer. "I've been thinking," he said suddenly, "when I grow up, I don't want to become the kind of man Dad was." "You won't," I said, reaching over to ruffle his hair. "You're already more than he ever chose to be." He smiled, then looked at me with eyes far too wise for 12. "You know, Mom. You didn't just survive. You fought back. And you won." I looked at him, feeling something swell in my chest. Pride, love, something too big for words. "No," I whispered. "We did." And for the first time in a long time, I believed that tomorrow wouldn't be something to fear. It would be something to build. Together.